Welcome to the Tea Mind. I'm Erica, and this is your weekly pause to put the kettle on, rebalance gently, and reconnect with what matters. So, welcome back to the Tea Mind podcast. And in today's episode, we are digging into the rebalance moment, that point when you realise that maybe life has tipped a little bit off centre, and then we're going to get into the small rituals and habits that help you find your way back. My guest today is Claire Fitzsimmons, co-founder of If Lost, Start Here, a wellbeing company on a mission to help people get to a better place. And Claire is an ICF accredited coach and an emotions coaching practitioner, and she works with women navigating change, burnout, overwhelm, or simply a sense of feeling a little bit stuck. She's also the host of the awesome podcast I Thought I Kept. And yeah, I can't recommend that enough. I have listened to most of the episodes by now. They are fantastic. Each week she talks with guests from creative industries, academic, the world, businesses, well-being fields, about ideas that last a lifetime. And in our conversation today, we're going to talk about Claire's main rebalance moment, the cost, and the story that we tell ourselves when we're running on empty, and also the tiny, repeatable ways that Claire comes back to centre when life starts to speed up. And at the end, you're going to leave with a little simple 3-minute tea ritual that you can try this week. So, hello, Claire. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Hi, it's so lovely to be here. Hi, Erica.
And how are you today, Claire?
I'm good. I'm good. I've just come off a slight break, which has been really nice. And I'm just getting back into it. So it feels like there's some sort of fresh energy. There's some new things coming out. So I feel good.
Fantastic. So, I am fascinated by your story, but let's start by talking about your main rebalance moment. Is there something that comes to mind in your life when a moment that just you realize that life had gone a little bit off center and you needed to do something to rebalance it a little bit?
Yeah, I have a really vivid one. I had just left my first career. So I used to work in the arts as an exhibition maker and a curator. And I'd just left that career. I had my second child, my daughter, she was a baby. And I was really trying to figure things out, like what I was going to do, what I would spend my time doing, what the next career was going to be for me. I had some inkling of what that was. And I'd started to do some consultancy work in kind of the well-being space. I was working on producing a conference in San Francisco. I was consulting on some new space in Oakland. I was doing various things. And I was also trying to balance being a new mum. And I'd gone from the situation where I'd had this very clear delineated job. Like I would show up somewhere, I would do my job, I would come home. It was very, very clear to me. And suddenly I had this situation that I didn't have any boundaries around it. There was just me working when I could possibly work, me trying to figure out what my purpose was, and also being not a new parent, but a parent to two kids. And there was this one moment that I was walking through this town that I lived in. At the time, I was living in California. I was walking down my street and I was looking after Ottilie that day, my daughter. And so she was in the sling. And in my mind, I was this very nurturing, mama bear kind of parent. Like I was very with her. We spent time together. And I was trying to do that, just trying to do it all, but thinking I'd sort of got this. And I got a phone call from a press contact, and they wanted to interview me about this co-working space that I was working for. And instead of saying, no, 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 I can't quite make it today. Can I do it later in the week? Can I do it at 3 o'clock today when my husband's taking care of my daughter? I said, of course I can do that. So they said, great, let's do it in the next 5 minutes. And at that moment, Ottilie, because she's a baby, needed to have a diaper change. And so I'm looking around, I'm figuring out like where to find, a cafe, a bathroom, anything that I could like change her. And the journalist calls at the moment that I'm in the bathroom stall. Ottilie is being changed, and I'm trying to have this call. And at that point, I was like, oh, oh, I've gone too far. Like, this is not working for anybody. Like, I'm probably, I mean, I don't think I was entirely nonsensical on the call, but it didn't feel good to me. It probably wasn't ideal for my daughter, and it didn't actually, it wasn't about, I'd left the first career because I was getting burned out. And I did find myself struggling to kind of being working mum. And I was like, oh, I'm still here. Like I'm still burning myself out. I'm still struggling to have multiple roles, and I'm feeling deeply, deeply like disconnected from all the things that I'm doing. And that was a really clear moment to me that it can go too far, and I do have to catch myself in some moments. And I've learned, I think, that since then, not perfectly, but since then, to be much clearer about, you know, when and how I show up in the different roles and different identities. But it was such a sort of like a moment of like a real epiphany of like, this is not working for anybody. And this is slightly ridiculous. What am I doing?
Yeah, that's such a vivid moment there. Do you get any sort of feelings in your body, sort of what comes up? Can you remember how you felt at that time in that moment when you're trying to do everything?
Yeah, and I do, and I know this feeling. It's very visceral for me because it's something that I have learned to recognize in myself. And I think it's that real feeling of overwhelm, that real sense of like, you're just living on the edge of panic and your breath is really shallow. Like you're not quite breathing, you're not quite there, you're not quite in the moment, and that everything is like really heightened. And I know for me, when I'm overwhelmed, like overwhelmed is a really interesting feeling because it's a real cluster of emotions. Like it's a lot of different things that's kind of hidden behind this big feeling. Um, and for me, it's really noisy. So things just get really noisy. And it's like I can't hear myself think anymore. And I can't connect with myself anymore. It's like there's something between me and my thoughts and myself. And that I just kind of feel lost, just really lost within something. And when I get to that point, when it's like, oh, that's too much. Oh, it's overwhelm. That's the moment that I'm like, oh, okay, let's pull back.
And just digging in a bit more into why do you think you said yes to that journalist rather than actually could we do it at 3 o'clock tomorrow or maybe in an hour when I'm back home or something like that? Because I recognize that I have done that countless times myself. When you were talking, I brought me right back to a moment when my second child was a baby and I had to do a really sort of urgent thing. It was something we had to go on a trip to New York, and it was the interview for that, something like really important. And they called up and said, right, they're going to call in 10 minutes. And I was like, yeah, yeah, fine, absolutely fine. And I'm sat in a ball pit in soft play with screaming children. And why? Why could I not say, no, that doesn't work for me? Like it's a whole people pleasing thing for me and at that point years ago not having the right boundaries in place and the
Mm.
self-confidence, self-worth. There's so much comes up there for me. So that just brought me right back to that. So I wonder what comes up for you.
Yeah, so much there. I think a few things come to mind. So one of them, I think, was that I really wanted to believe that I could do all the things. Like I really wanted to believe that like I was able to multitask, that I was able to be like a working mom, that I could hold two identities in the same at the same time and in the same space. And it had been really important to me as like in early motherhood, believing that I could kind of do it all. Like I'd really taken on those ideas. I'd really taken on something that said, you could be a person who is like managing and not just coping, but just managing life really, really well. And I think that was important to me because my mum had been much more traditional, like a real like stay-at-home mum, like was very much there for us, was extraordinary, like just an incredible person who created this amazing home for us. And also, I remember thinking that's not what I want for myself. Like it didn't, there was something about that just didn't sit right with me, but I really respect and admire her. And so in those really early days, I was so scared that I would lose myself in motherhood. I was so frightened of that. And I was trying so hard to hold on to this real identity that I felt that I crafted through work. And work was really important to me. It's still really important to me. And that's like, the shadow thing for work for me is over identifying with work. And so in those really early days when I had come off, like, so working in the arts was really intense. And so much of my identity was about being a curator and exhibition maker. That was sort of, I was like 90% of my identity was that. And so I was really finding it hard to make the transition out of that into this, whatever this other identity was. And I do remember, like with my first child, I had gone from full time to part time. And I remember trying really hard to be like, there is a boundary. So I would work mornings and in the afternoon I would be with my son. And I was trying really hard to hold that boundary. Like I was like, I can do this, this is fine. And there was a moment that one of my bosses at the time had set a meeting at 2 o'clock on a Friday. And I left work at 1 o'clock on Friday so that I could get home and, meet the childminder or my husband, whoever was taking care of the baby, and I could switch over. And I remember replying to this email saying, so sorry, I can't make Friday at 2 because I'm with Sam. And I got such a horrible email back that said, work is everything, your job is everything, you should be grateful for being part-time. Like so horrible. And that had really like knocked me because I was really trying. And I think there was something in that that said, like, you know what, if you present as a mom in this working environment, you will be seen differently. You will be seen as not, being good enough at your job. There was something about like status then that I was like, oh, if I said because I'm a mom, I can't make this meeting, or because I have this boundary, like I have to be my child because of childcare, that I wouldn't be seen as capable. And that had really hit me. So I think going to my second child, some of that had stayed, and there's a real residue of that, of like, oh, okay, if I say no to this call, not only like maybe this call won't happen, but maybe I'll be seen a certain way, and that's not how I want to be presenting right now.
Mm. Wow, that is it's shocking and it happens every day to women every
Yeah, it
single
does.
day, and it's really shocking that that still happens. And even if um companies, bosses aren't quite so obvious with their words, I think it's still there in the background. I think lots and lots of women can relate to that.
Yes, I
Definitely.
mean, so many of the women that I do work with, so overwhelm is a really common emotion, but also that we can recognize it in ourselves and we can figure out how we need to resource ourselves and what to do with that. But it's only possible to a certain extent if your employer or your family dynamic or whatever your support system also acknowledges that too. So we have to, so it's like, so there's a moment that we have to figure out, okay, now I have to pull back and now I have to catch myself. But also the systems around you, the environment you work in, the business you work in, the working place also has to catch you as well and say, we also respect your time boundaries. We also expect your different identities, whether, working mother or not, like all the different pieces of you. And that has to happen as well. And I think it's knowing like that balance can be really difficult between knowing what we need and then how we can get that in the systems that we work within.
And how long were you in that particular job when that comment happened? How long did you last in that particular job?
So I've been like there was a lot that was amazing about it. So I think I would like there was like things that I was so grateful for and I loved so much about it. And although that moment my boss didn't do very well, he was also really supportive in other ways. So it did take me a while to leave and I very gradually like exited the arts at that point. So I'd gone from I was working full time to working part time to working as a consultant. And so it very gradually shifted. And I think that shift was really happening around what I recognized I needed and I couldn't see. So I would also be I remember looking at like senior people in that field and wondering, did they have a life that I wanted? Like, were they balancing it? Did they have a lifestyle? And realizing that I'd have to sacrifice so much to keep going. So it did take me, I mean, I want to say maybe like 2 years in various iterations to leave and to figure that out. But it took a while.
Yeah. Oh, I thought we were going to say much longer than that. So tell me more about that journey then. What happened when you were a consultant and then yeah, what happened? How did you morph into the next stage of your journey?
Yeah, so I did become really interested in well-being. And part of that was because of my own experiences. Like I've been through periods of anxiety in my life. Um, and there've been certain moments that has got more difficult to manage than other points. But also my mum had gone through like a mental health disorder that really impacted probably last decade of her life. And I was realizing that working in the arts wasn't kind of enough for me anymore. There was something about that well-being piece that I was really curious about. And so when I left, I started the company If Lost with Amanda Sheeran, who's my business partner. And it was really all about like, how can we find ways to support ourselves? How can we find the help that we need when we're feeling anxious or lost or lonely or disconnected? And it was a guidebook in the beginning. So it started off as like, how can we signpost people to like places that can support them out in the world? So like a school of life or a poetry pharmacy or there's like a museum of make believe, like all these different places that could sort of give us the things that we needed. And then COVID happened, and we couldn't signpost people to places in quite the same way because we couldn't get to them in the same way. And we moved back, my family and I moved back to the UK. And at that point, I was like, oh, there's something about supporting people out in the world, which is so important to what we do. We're coming back to the guidebook now. And there's a place in Scotland that we just featured, and there are some amazing places in Bath. So we're coming back to that piece of the business. But after COVID, we really went back to like the one-on-one. So I trained as a coach and an emotions coach practitioner because I wanted, and I noticed and people coming to us about like, what do I do in my daily life? How can I support myself? What do I do when I'm feeling overwhelmed and disconnected? And so that became a huge part of what I do, which is doing the one-on-one coaching work and really moving into that space. And then more recently, I started the podcast because what I noticed is that often the people I was working with and the well-being world that I found myself in, there's so much information and there's so much like you should do, you must do, you have to do's. And particularly if we're feeling overwhelmed, all of that makes us feel a bit worse. Like, oh, wait, what should we be doing now? And, should we be wild swimming or, should we be meditating and all the things? And so the podcast really started from like what really does stay with us and what can really help us and what do we really need and how can we make it much more simple for ourselves. So it's kind of gone through these different iterations, the company. And now we just say that we're really about helping people get to a better place. And that could be a place out in the world that, can help with creativity or help with connection, or it could be a more internal place, like a place that they feel more clarity or a sense of being a bit more hopeful or optimistic or connected. And so we do both things now.
So at that juncture when you were moving into that space and learning, like getting your coaching accreditation and everything, and going through everything that you went through with your mum as well, which I can't imagine how difficult that must have been. What sort of things were missing, were you sort of looking for that weren't there?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'm just going to cough. So I think something that I really struggled with. So with my mum, it it was quite hard because she had quite like on the severe side of like having a mental health condition. So my dad, who was her primary caregiver, was dealing more with like psychiatry and medications. And there was a moment, like I remember the first years that she got sick, and I was living here, really trying to find ways to help her. So I'd spend a lot of time researching and, trying to kind of keep her in the world as much as we could. And I think very quickly I realized, we'd go to see somebody and they'd say, oh, just listen to this meditation CD. Or we would be given a pamphlet about something. And that whole system just felt really broken and just not really meeting us where we needed to be. But I struggled to know how to help her. And what I realized is that, and where I got really interested, I think, is that how could I make sure her story didn't become my own story? Because I didn't really know what had happened to her. Like she was very bubbly and very vivacious and very much, joyful. And then around her midlife, we started to lose her. And we didn't really get a diagnosis that made that much sense of what had happened. And so a lot of the time that my mum was struggling, I was living with this sense of real fear and anxiety because I was like, what if that happens to me? And that's when I started to become interested in, well-being. And the need that I was seeing is that so much of well-being, in a sense, felt that it wasn't made for me. Like that I was, I am somebody that does get anxious. I am somebody that probably needs a little bit more like support in a sense, like connection support. And the messages I felt were so much about I had to be a different person to access that stuff. And the way that I work is that I know that for me, if I'm curious about the world, if I'm out in the world, then I'll feel better. Like I just know that like if I find myself getting a little bit down, disconnected, going to a gallery weirdly really helps me. Or I know that having a good conversation really helps me. Or I know that, going for a walk with a neighbor really helps me. And so the piece at the beginning that I wasn't seeing was that piece about connection and that piece about being out in the world and that piece about curiosity. And that was the real driver at the beginning. And it was very much about like, how can we make this feel more experimental, more playful, more creative? Like so, and kinder, like the and relatable too. And I remember at the beginning when I was looking into this field, at that time anyway, this was a while ago, all the images were of people with their heads in their hands. It was all blue. I would just remember looking at that material being like, gosh, I feel worse. So the branding became really important that it was like playful and uplifting and warm and inviting. So I think that was the thing, the need that I was really seeing was how could we absolutely like look at being going inwards, but we really need to be looking at how we're connecting in other ways too.
And can you tell me about some of the specific things that really helped you at that time? You talked about connection and getting outside, and I know you've written about Explorer Days, which is a brilliant idea. So, yeah, tell me about some of those things that helped.
Yeah, so so my business partner works a little bit differently than me, what she seeks out, but we both seek something out. And for me, um, so there is one message that says, go on the yoga mat, and that absolutely sometimes I do that too, and that's really great. But I do seek out museums so if I feel like I'm in a certain period of like overwhelm or my nervous system is dysregulated, I will go to a museum for an hour. And it's just like the same way that someone will go to a gym. Because what it does for me and what the evidence is showing is that museums can be like empathy building. They can be places when we see the stories of others, that can help us better understand our own stories. They can be places that we can like connect with something bigger than ourselves. So there's something about awe and wonder. So awe is a really good emotion. It's a really great pro-social emotion that can help us, regulate ourselves as well. So there's something about that I find really calming and restorative about going to museums, but also like going to a bookshop and also really helps me. There's something about these multiple narratives. I find them really calming. I have to go to cafes. This is all sounding very idiosyncratic, but there's something about because I work so much at home, being in a room full of other people that I think there's something like co-regulation in that. There's something about the energy of that space that I really like. So for me, I did start to build in, like I had a period of kind of overwhelm around September of last year. And I was looking at my calendar and I was like, what is missing from this? And I was seeing that there's all these moments of like, there's work. I go on a daily walk, which always helps. Like every day I go for a walk. Um, and even if it's just like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, just getting outside the house, no matter the weather, really just helps reset something. But what I was noticing is that what I didn't have in my calendar at that time, there were no like explorer moments. There were no moments of novelty. There were no moments of just like feeding my curiosity. And that for me is really important. So I started to, on Saturday mornings, leave the house early and go to a new place. And there is something for me about exploring the world and it getting bigger that it doesn't contribute to the overwhelm. It actually like, I need a wider world in which to function. And that really, really helps me. So those explorer moments, sometimes explorer days are with the kids and it's the family, but these explorer moments when I choose something new to do, like and I've done a series of things. I started writing about it on Substack. I would make myself do a series of things like go to a communal sauna, or I went to a disco dance class, and I went to a yoga art workshop, which was yoga and art. And so these things are like, they're just really good for making you get out of your comfort zone, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, um, realize that people are really interesting and friendly and lovely and nice. and takes away some of that social anxiety, and also puts into perspective the things that, some things I can do every day are a little bit like they're a bit heavier, and the client work can kind of sit with me, and sometimes it's getting out of myself that really helps.
Yes, no, I love that, and I can, yeah, really relate to that as well. I moved to a new area about 18 months ago, and
Mm.
at the start, yeah, every day I would go to a new place and do different things. And then after 6 months, I realized I'd stopped doing that and I'd started getting into the same routines. So yeah, I'm trying to do that a bit more, just to try and go to different places, whether it's just a different walk or yeah, cafes are my thing as well. I work from home a lot as well, so I really hear you when you say it can be really difficult sort of when you're working by yourself without connection with other people as well. So getting out to cafes, and even if you're not necessarily chatting or meeting other people, there is something there about just being around other people and chatting to the barista or whatever. It does make a big difference and helps to sort of just calm your nervous system, I think, and regulate you.
And it does make a difference. It's interesting. There's some really interesting research about how we do feel better from those accidental relationships. So that we think that relationships have to be like our deep friendships, and we do need to nurture those too. But there's some really interesting evidence around like just saying hello to your barista or your neighbors, or just having these like more like sort of accidental interactions. They really do contribute to our well-being. And I think what it's also kind of speaking to is that we can have this more expansive view of what well-being can be for us. Like often we think we have to do certain things, but when we make it really tailored to ourselves and when we kind of get really curious about what it could look like, then I think it kind of really opens something up, and it kind of can be fun and playful again. So it can be like what you said, going to new places,
Mm.
and it's just keeping that going, like keeping that momentum going, because very quickly I think we can fall back into like real life,
Yeah.
and then can lose ourselves again. So I think there's a practice in that of like, how do you keep it alive and not necessarily consistent? I think sometimes we think consistency is the thing, but if you don't work that way, then you can start wondering what's wrong with you because you're not doing the same thing anymore. And I think it's allowing yourself just to explore and experiment and just
Yeah.
see what feels right for you in that moment. And maybe it will shift and change, but that's okay.
Yeah, I love that feeling of making it fun and playful and
Mm.
having experiments with things as well. I think that's really, really powerful. And how do you notice when you are maybe not doing things that help you as much? What's the sort of early warning signs, and how have you trained yourself to recognize that now?
Yeah, I start to, I mean, I start to look at curiosity. And so curiosity, it's a real temperature check for me. So if I feel like the sense of like I'm not curious about anything anymore, I'm just kind of going through the motions, I'm feeling a bit stuck, I'm feeling a bit lost, that's the big warning sign for me. So like if I stop reading books, if I stop listening to podcasts, if I stop seeking things, that generally means something is starting to tip for me. And I'm just kind of just going through not the motions, I'm just showing up at my work and just doing the things. And that's fine, but it's not sustainable for me because it will tip very quickly. Um, so when I get to that point, it's very much saying, okay, how can I bring back curiosity to what I'm doing? And what can I do to kind of feed my curiosity? And that's really the moment for me that things can shift again. And the other thing I've become much better at is that before I used to think that being productive meant being consistent, that I had to like show up to do the same things each day in a similar way at the same intensity. And I've become much clearer at recognizing that my energy fluctuates massively depending on, time of the month, depending on what I've been doing, even depending on the seasons. And so I've become better at looking at my calendar and responding to my energy in how I schedule things. And so I know that in January was really busy for me with a lot of people. There were like lots of like workshops, interactions, and talks and things. And then last week I cleared my calendar of people because I knew that by then I would need a period of research, writing, reading, something else. And if I didn't do that, then I would stay in the sense of, what we've been talking about, of just, my curiosity is going, I'm feeling a bit lost, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, and those warning signs are coming. And so that has helped me, but it's also trying to hold that boundary that we started at the beginning of saying it is important to me and it is okay to me and it will help me if I recognize the boundary needs to go in and I hold that boundary. And so when those warning signs, I've got better at anticipating those warning signs so that my calendar kind of is a buffer against them a bit more.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting. And I wonder, because you are running your own business, you're in charge of your own calendar and your own time, how does that tally with the traditional sort of 9 to 5? You must be at your desk between 9 and 5 and get up early, do all the things, do your yoga, your meditation, and then get to work at your desk 9 o'clock, finish at 5. How do you tally that with your actual real life and how you work with your own energy and what's going on in your life on a daily basis?
Yeah, I've become much more accepting that I don't have a traditional work schedule. Like at the beginning, it was really hard for me. And now I know that, and I've tried this, I know that so I wake up at 5 and my voice keeps going. I'm so sorry. I used to think that if I woke up at 5, I would be the person who would wake up, I would journal, I would meditate, I would do yoga, and then that would be my morning routine. I now know that I wake up at 5, basically have a cup of coffee and read the news. And that is just who I am. Like I need a really slow way into the day. Um, and I also know I used to think that exercise for me would be something that would happen at the beginning of the day because that's kind of what we assume that's the right thing to do. And now I know that it happens in between moments. So I could have some calls with clients and then I will need to go for a swim afterwards. Or I will have some podcasts that I've been recording, and then that's when the walk will happen afterwards. So in a sense, they start to resource each other. Um, I also know that I will work at the weekends, and that's something that I think I've struggled with the most because before weekends were really sacred to me. Um, and now they are times of catching up on the week. And so that's probably my next thing to try and figure out. It's like I'm okay that I get to have a more fluid working life. I think that offers so much for me. I get to be there for my kids in ways that work for me now. I get to have this like multi-hyphenate working environment and, job, and that works really well. But there's something about this weekend piece I haven't figured out because it's now I get to Friday night and sometimes I can still have that feeling of, oh, I didn't do enough. I haven't done everything. And so Saturday morning I'm up early and I'm catching up on work, or it's Sunday and I'm opting out of family stuff because I need to finish something and get on top of the week. So I think that's the moment for me that I need to figure out like, what does it look like to work well and be healthy and positive, and also figure out my work weekend because I think that's the piece for me that's next.
Well, when you figure that out, please let me know because I'm in the same boat. And I hear you with the working week as well. Like I do not get up at 5 o'clock. I am not an early riser, and I need that slow start as well with multiple cups of tea before I can really get going. And I love sitting, meditating, journaling, just really lovely, long, slow start.
Mm.
And then I get into it and I'm trying to do the big thing first now and then reward myself with going and doing something outside, whether it's a strength class at the gym or just a walk to go and get a cup of tea in a cafe or something like that. And sort of sandwiching that, like you say, that then gives me a focus to get the hard thing done first of all, and then a reward, and then I'm back and I'm feeling more energized, ready to do more stuff. But yeah, having that, I think, boundary with traditional weekends is it's tricky, particularly when you're really obsessed with what you do and love the work that you do. It can be all consuming. So it's quite hard. I find it really difficult to sort of put that in a box sometimes and put clear boundaries around it. But then at the
Yeah,
same time, it's almost like a new way of working. We're not fitting into that traditional 9 to 5 model. And if you're happy with it, obviously there's ways that we can improve it and make better boundaries. So we've got proper family time, time for friends and everything else that has to happen in a day. But yeah, sort of juggling that boundary is something that I am working on as well. So yeah, let me
We
know
can
how
work
you
on it
get on with
together.
it.
There was something I saw that helped that I saw Emma Gannon has been talking a lot about overwhelm. I think she went through a period of burnout last year and her book's responding to that.
Mm,
And she talked about how she breaks her day into three chunks. And so there's the, like you said, like you do the deep work, the big project, and then you have a break, and then you do, maybe you do like the quicker work or you respond to emails and you just have, I think there's some freedom in that, you know, what would it look like if you were to intentionally organize your day and your time that way? And it didn't just start at 9 and ended at 5,
mm.
and you're constantly working, but there is like the 2 hour deep work, the half an hour break, the 2 hour, responding to people, whatever that would be for you. And I think there is some freedom in that. And I think there's also something that you said about like you enjoy it, like you love doing this. And I think that's something for me when I'm working at the weekend, I very rarely think I hate doing this. Why am I doing this? Often when I'm like, this is fun and I love this and I want to do more of it. So I think that's that too, isn't it? Of
Yeah.
like, it can be really fun for us and really wonderful, but that's the thing that we've got to be careful of because, you know, we've got to like, what's the healthy version of it being wonderful and fun rather than the overwhelmed version where you're starting to burn out.
Yes, it's all a balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got so many questions. I could just talk to you forever. I really want to, you've mentioned overwhelm quite a lot, and that's something that comes up an awful lot for a lot of people, particularly around midlife and just in life generally, but
Mm.
particularly around the time of life that I find myself in now with sort of children. Mine are 11 and 15 now, and sort of aging parents and everything to
So many
juggle.
things.
So overwhelm is familiar. So yeah, but I think it's something that I'm not sure people really understand what it is and what it means and yeah, what we can
Mm.
do about it, how we get over overwhelm. So yeah, can you talk to
Yeah.
us more about that?
Yeah. So you're right. So midlife is this really, really almost fraught period where, we are the sandwich generation and we are often managing, our relationships, which are our parents, and maybe we're grieving parents, maybe their own relationships are shifting. So we're looking after them in new stages of their life. We're looking after children who are maybe, they have their own needs too. Maybe they're about to leave home. Maybe there's something around identity for us. There's also, where are we at in our careers? There's lots of questions in midlife about are we where we're supposed to be? Are we where we need to be? Am I starting a new career? There's a really interesting idea of the number of people who are starting businesses in their 40s and they're leaving careers and their second careers. So there's a lot going on. And maybe for the first time, there are some health things. There may be things around, your body is changing. You're noticing some aches. You're not running the way you used to. There's something coming into that too. And maybe you don't look the way that you think you should look. There's some ideas about like visibility and identity that are coming in. So there's a lot going on in that period that just is going on. Like it's just that is the reality that we're navigating. And overwhelm is something that, I think I said earlier, it's this cluster of emotions. So what's interesting is like it's a lot of different feelings together. And what can really help is when you start to break it out and to say, like just even doing like we both journal and journaling is really important, but even doing something really simple of um you can start to say, I'm feeling sad about, I'm feeling annoyed about, I'm feeling frustrated by, I'm feeling hopeful about, I'm feeling optimistic about, and just practicing with different emotional words to see what is in that feeling for you. Like what is that about for you? And then you might find that in that feeling of overwhelm, the dominant emotion you're really dealing with could be something around grief or sadness. It could be something about, annoyance and irritation. It could be something about being overlooked and not seen, so feeling invisible. So often in that overwhelm, there are a lot of different emotions, and there's probably a dominant emotion. And when you start dealing with that, and then when you figure out what that emotion is, often it's about what's the need. Because sometimes with overwhelm, what we're doing, we're not meeting our core needs. Like we're keeping going, keeping going, keeping going. And we think we need to keep going. That's like the dominant narrative we have is like, produce, be active, contribute, participate, keep going, keep going, keep going. So overwhelm is, we think, is the driver of that. And when we can stop and resource ourselves and take the 3 minutes, sometimes in that, just asking ourselves, like, what is the need here? Like, what's the need that's not showing up? And maybe there is a need to rest. Maybe there's a need in your home to be acknowledged for what you are doing. Maybe there is a need to be more attuned to yourself. Like, I haven't checked in with myself for months. I have no idea what I'm feeling. I'm just doing the things. And in that moment to be like, okay, what am I feeling? What am I needing? And so when overwhelm does get noisy, sometimes we just have to, we think the thing we should do is just keep going and to make a better to-do list, like, or make a better calendar, or like, get better at like productivity hacks. And sometimes what overwhelm needs is something kind of counterintuitive, which is for us to stop. And that's really hard, but for us to stop and take a break, really get our nervous system back into regulation, really resource ourselves a bit, and then to see where we are and what we need. And like, I know I found that like there can be moments that, so even like this week, I have a number of deadlines every day and a number of work responsibilities that I have. And one tendency is just to keep pushing through. Like that's a really natural tendency for me. Like, just get through it, just do the thing. But if I'm being clearer about this and not getting overwhelmed, it's really getting a sense of like, okay, how can I build in small breaks for myself? So not keep pushing through, but build in small breaks so that I don't get to that stage of being overwhelmed. And so that I do feel good about what I'm doing because it's what I want to be doing. And I can get to that point of being like hopeful and grateful again for where I am. So often with overwhelm, it's like, it's okay to stop. It's almost essential to stop and figuring out what you really do need and what you're really feeling.
Yeah, so it sounds like overwhelmed when you're keeping sort of pushing going and not really checking in with yourself and listening to your body and yeah, sort of having that downtime to actually yeah, take a little pause and yeah, listen to yourself, to your inner voice or whatever, because you know what your body needs in that moment. But I guess that's leaning into sort of different emotions and trying to work out what that predominant emotion is, like you say. And I'm really curious how you got into emotions coaching as well and what that is. It sounds fascinating and something which is much needed these days. So yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand what it was either. Um, I had trained as a coach and I wanted to be, it was really important to me that I was like ethical and it was certified and that like I did the most rigorous course that I could do. And I started working with people and I was like, there's still something missing. I don't know what that piece is. There's still something that like I don't there's something missing. And there were these two coaches that I really admired, Joe Wheatley and Zoe Hawkins, and they offered this course for the first time about emotions coaching. And I was like, that's the piece. Like, that's it for me. Like, that's the thing that I really see coming up again and again with my clients. Like, they come and they are struggling with, like, maybe they're struggling with anxiety, maybe it's grief, maybe it's overwhelm, maybe it's anger. There's something there, sadness. It could be something like that. But also, often the people I work with, they have some narrative around what they're feeling. So they think they shouldn't feel this way. They should feel the same way that other people are feeling. They should be happy. Um, their emotions are not valid. That we are too emotional, we are too sensitive, we are too much. Like, there's a lot of narratives around that. And I was like, that's the piece. So the emotion coach training that I did was very much looking at the messages we hold around emotions, the narratives that we can have, what to do with them, what they are. Like, often we don't even know what emotions are, what feelings are. We don't really understand, like, we think we have to control them rather than understand them. So that training really focused on the emotional piece. And that's often the place we get to last, our emotions. Like, so much of what we do the thing in order to feel something, but we don't acknowledge what that feeling is sometimes. So we set like work goals because of achievement and success, but often there's a feeling that goes with achievement and success that we're really chasing. Or we do things to avoid a feeling. maybe you want to avoid loss or grief or sadness or whatever it is, or fear. Often that's the thing we're avoiding, but we're not aware that we're avoiding a fear. We just think we're avoiding public speaking or we're avoiding putting ourselves out there. Um, so that's become an area that I really do focus on, and it's kind of slightly ironic to me because um, in the arts, um, it felt very cognitive. It was very much about like thinking. It's very much about like what do you know, what can you learn, what can you teach, and there's a lot of cynicism around emotion. And I think there was too when I was growing up too. I don't think it's limited to that career, that field. I think a lot of the fields we were in, you didn't bring your emotions to work. That was something very, and definitely not as a woman. Like you don't bring your emotions to the office. Like you cry in the bathroom, you get frustrated secretly. If you're angry, you bottle it up. And so I learned very early on how to control my emotions because I thought I had to perform a certain way. So I could perform being amazing at my job and I have a lot of feelings about it, but you would never see those feelings about it. And I think that was something that I had really, really taken on. And I also, having done this work, I also realized that there were a lot of messages for me about being too sensitive. Like I felt too much. And I thought that was a really bad thing for a very long time. And having done this work, I've realized the strength and sensitivity. I've realized that feelings help us so much. They help us with work, they help us with business, they help us with relationship building. Like they are this incredible resource. So I've had to really shift my own thinking around emotions being helpful and supportive and connecting. Um, so for a while, the irony wasn't lost to me that I was like, oh, I've had to do so much of this work on myself in order to then be in this space. But I think as women, we carry so many messages around what we should and shouldn't feel and in what context and with which people. So a lot of this is unlearning some of those messages so that we can support ourselves and also support other people to allow for their emotions as well.
Yes, it's such important work. And yeah, I think part of what you do and all the coaching experience and emotions coaching and everything, you have to do the work on yourself first, which is how you're able to help other people. So it's a journey, a long journey.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, and also really fascinating how it all kind of fits together. Like sometimes, I look at all the different things that I do, and in a sense, they're all just about how to be a person in the world, how to live your life well and whatever that means to you, and how to like be in the world that you're in, like not just like your body and yourself and your mind, but actually the environments in which you live too. So they all kind of do speak to each other, and um, yeah, and it's interesting to see like, at heart, I think I am a curator, and curators are all about connecting the dots. Like the job that I was trained in was very much about like how can you bring these different pieces and create one single story. And I think that's kind of what these different things do. And they're just about just how do we just feel better in the world that we live in.
Yeah. And what's your thoughts on the whole mind-body connection as well? There's much more acceptance nowadays, sort of feeling into your body, yeah, working with your emotions. How do you see that playing out now and going forward?
Yeah, I mean, that's really fascinating. Like so much of, so I was definitely guilty of thinking my feelings in the sense of, and by what I mean by that is I would think I was feeling sad, but I wouldn't allow myself to feel sad,
Hmm.
and I wouldn't allow it to be in my body, if that makes sense. But so much of it is in my body, but I'm just not aware of it. And I remember being asked really early on in my training, I must have said something, whatever the emotion was. Maybe it was anger for me, actually. I feel angry, or I think I feel angry. And someone's saying to me, where do you feel that in your body? And I was like, I don't know what you mean. Like I
Yeah.
didn't understand the question. And then when you really connect in with a feeling and you realize where that is in your body and what that does and how it energizes you or de-energizes you or how it moves through you or where it sits, and then you're able to better process the emotions. And that was a piece for me that was kind of revelatory that I hadn't understood. And now I definitely do somatic practices where and that to me is like going for a walk, doing some yoga, between meeting clients, like moving my body, because there is something about emotions needing to move and my body needing to move in order for me to process feelings. That's become a bigger part of what I do privately. Um, but it's definitely that mind body piece is so important in how we do understand and process our emotions.
Indeed, yeah. And I think there is so much more that we are still to learn about how all that works, particularly when you talk about somatic therapy and things like that as well, like dealing with the fascia. It's
Oh,
absolutely fascinating. And I've done some work on that myself. And yeah, just absolutely mind blowing. And I have no doubt that there's a lot of it really does work. I've no doubt about that. But yeah, I think the science and all that still to sort of catch up with it. But yeah, definitely.
yeah.
There's so much there if you can just take that time to slow down and really tune in to your body and feel what it is you're feeling and work through that. It's so, so powerful and we can store so much in our body,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
is
And there's that
affecting
moment.
us.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it affects us subconsciously and can affect our whole life. But you can change it quite quickly just by doing some tiny little movements or whatever. It's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it doesn't have to be like the big practice. Like I think it's the tiny movement.
Yeah.
Like you might find, there are some yoga poses that can just release things for you. It's that moment that I don't know if you've ever done this, but you've done a breathwork practice or a visualization and you find yourself sobbing and you think,
Yeah.
where did that come from? And it's like so much of what we hold in our bodies that we don't even know is there
Yeah.
and finding ways to release that.
Yes. Fascinating. And I'm curious as well, what's your take on AI as we're moving forward? And I know there's an awful lot coming up about this at the moment, and lots of people using platforms like ChatGPT to
Mm.
talk to people like it's their therapist and whatnot. What's your thoughts on that, and how do you think that's going to change this space going forward?
Oh gosh, that's such an amazing question. I think it's going to have a huge impact. Like I see it already. Like
Mhm.
I think there was something I read the other day, and I can't remember the percentage, but it was huge. The number of people that don't go to ChatGPT for information, they go to it for support. And I think sometimes it can feel like there is a barrier to entry on some of these, like having access to wellness professionals or therapists or coaches. It costs money. You have to find the right person, like the right fit is really, really important. You have to find the time in your schedule. And sometimes in that heightened emotional state, all of that feels too much. It feels too hard. So it would make sense that you open your screen, you type in a question, and you get some information. Um, so it makes sense. I don't know enough about like, you see the scare stories about people who have used it that then um, don't get the help and support that they need. I don't know or totally understand that data on that, like what degree it's that or how many people are being genuinely helped. I think the piece that I come back to again and again is around human connection as being a piece that's so important to how we heal and support one another and understand ourselves. And I don't know quite I don't think you need to recreate that, but I think there's something in parallel with that maybe. So it's that moment that, you have had a conversation with somebody and you just come away feeling energized, you feel better, you feel good. Like there is something magical, I think, that happens in that human to human space. And there is something about, when you work with someone, like a coach or a therapist or practitioner of any kind, then really understanding who you are, like the nonverbal communications, the things you're not saying as much as the things you're saying, those in between things, how you respond to a question, what your tone is, like what happens with your energy, all those things. And so there's a lot of information that's lost in just communicating through writing as well, and not being seen. And there is something I think extraordinary that happens sometimes in person is when you are able to practice with another person some of the things you struggle with. So what does it feel like to say the thing What does it feel like to be visible to another person? What does it feel like to share an emotion? Those things. Um, so I have questions about AI. I don't, but I definitely don't like, I don't think I demonize it. Like, I think it's extraordinary. Like, I get excited about it sometimes. And I think it's extraordinary about what you're able to do. And definitely, as a, a tiny, tiny, tiny company, there are resources there that help us in a business sense. So there are those pieces that I think are really exciting. Um, but I think there is something that I find myself getting more excited about, that connection and in-person piece right now. And I think I see, as much as I see a drive towards I also see this drive towards being in person more, and people wanting to be in real life with each other, and people wanting to do things together, and people wanting to read more and do events and get to festivals. I think there's a huge longing, and that I think makes me excited more.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I'm seeing much more need and a drive for people to actually connect together in person and much more sort of in-person events as well happening. Is that something that you're planning for going forward?
Yes, that's a new piece. I went to this amazing event in September, um, called the Happy Summer Camp that I think you would love, Erica. It's so much fun. And it's very much about bringing people together and actually entrepreneurs together, people in business together, to spend a weekend. And you do like workshops and lectures, but you're camping and it's like this festival atmosphere. It's very fun. And one of the learnings I had coming out of that is that the company had originally started because we wanted to kind of bring people out into the world to get people, you know, to places that can make them happier and healthier and more human. And so coming out of the weekend, I was like, oh, the piece I want to do more of is this like in-person piece because I got so much from 2 days in the field with 150 people. And that's not my skill set. Like I'm not an events organizer. Like that's not what I do. But what I do love doing is making really intimate, like small moments for people to connect. So like 12 to 15 people, like that love and makes me really excited. And there is so much magic that happens when you bring a group of people together in a room, like every single time. It's incredible. And so already this year we've been experimenting with more events. We've done some wellbeing journaling workshops that were part of the Bath Wellbeing Festival, which was so wonderful. Like just 2 hours to journal and to spend time with each other and to connect and to share. It's just so wonderful. And in the springtime, we're doing our first reading retreat. So that came up because um, I love books so much. And I think I'm someone who reads. In my mind, I'm someone who reads. I have a literature degree, like I'm someone who loves books. And I have this huge to be read pile by my bed, and I'm just not getting to it. I'm just, and I, for, so many different reasons. And I had gone to a silent book club as part of my like experiments in September. And it was like 2 hours where we just random group of strangers came together in a cafe and we just read. And it was so lovely and restorative and nourishing and so, so, so simple. And my feed got populated by like reading retreats but they were all like 2 days in Sweden or going up to Scotland, like whatever it would be. And I was like, I don't have that time for reading, but what I could do is spend a morning with people reading. So we are doing I think it's like a morning. It's on this farm in Somerset, and there's like a lake and a sauna, so you could read and then go for a swim and have a sauna and talk and do that. And I'm really excited about that because I think it's that magic of bringing people together and almost to do a parallel activity, like something where we're together, but if you're an introvert like I am, it's nice to like have a book open and do that.
Yes, safety. The book.
Safety.
Oh, I love that idea. Yeah, it's something we're planning more of this year as well.
Yeah.
Just creating more of a space to bring people together. And we're doing more sort of tea gatherings where we can bring people together. We settle down with a cup of tea and then we just have little conversations and break off into small groups or alone if you prefer, and then come back together and share tea at the end of it. So yeah, I
Oh,
love
I
the
love
idea
that
of your
idea. I would do that if I was there in Edinburgh. I would do that.
Oh,
and
I'm
in a
coming to
heartbeat. It would
Bath.
be so lovely.
Definitely want to do that happy summer camp as well. That sounds amazing.
It's very fun.
So yeah, so many exciting things. Yeah, is there anything else you've got coming up or anything that you wish we talked about that we've not covered yet? I'm conscious that I could talk to you for another couple of hours. There's so much to chat about. But yeah, anything that you
There's
would
a
like
love
to bring up?
Yeah, there's a lovely moment when you forget that you're on a podcast and you're just chatting and you think, we
Exactly.
should just keep going. There's no one here. Yeah, probably the last thing is we have just made our first wellbeing journal. And that's something that Amanda and I have worked on for the past 18 months. And I'm really excited about. And we wanted to, like, we both journal. I think, journaling is just so powerful and extraordinary. And just getting something down on the page can help actually with emotional release as well. And so this journal is kind of doing well-being journaling a bit differently. It's so much about um, get like connecting with ourselves and figuring out what we need and then getting out into the world. So it helps people connect with like nature, with creativity. It helps people have a sense of purpose. It helps them figure out spiritual practices. It goes across these like 10 different areas of our lives, and it offers this really expansive view of well-being so that becomes fun and collaborative and playful and just something you really want to do and get into. So that's coming out in a month, which I'm really excited about. And it's like the culmination of so much of our research and our work the last decade, actually. So that feels really exciting. And so we'll probably be talking more about that on like socials and things in late March.
It sounds amazing. And yeah, I'll definitely be getting my hands on that. And are there a few sort of tips that you would give our sort of listeners that they could carry forward, maybe little things that help them rebalance in the moment if they're feeling maybe overwhelmed or not sure where to go to next or feeling a little bit stuck or having that moment like you did changing the diaper on the press call and thinking, oh, nope, I've gone too far. What do I do now? So yeah, any sort of maybe three things from the wellbeing journal that you turn to time and time again that really help you.
Oh yeah, that's great. Okay, let's think three things. I okay, so I love getting into nature. And by that, I don't mean you have to like go on a massive hike. Like, I think if you look out the window and you see some greenery, you get to see the sky, you get to like even bring a plant into your home. There is something about nature that, like, I got very much into flowers a year ago. Like, they make me happy. Like, there's something like, so figure out the piece of nature that you like and get to it, bring it in, see it, whatever that would be for you. Um, I think creativity is something that's massively, massively undervalued. We can have ideas around it that it's like indulgent. And we left it behind in art class when someone said they hated our drawing. But there is something about, getting into a creative practice that can really help with things like slowing down, connecting with ourselves. And so that could be as simple as, you have a empty page and you scribble for 5 minutes and you see what comes up. You could start watercolors, you could try ceramic practice, um, like just something that like you could write for the purpose of not publishing. Like so often we think that we write for newsletters, for Substack. You could just take a prompt, there's amazing prompts, and just write a story just for yourself. So creativity, I think, is really exciting. And let's think connection, I think phone a friend. Like I think we massively worry that if we reach out to people, they don't want to hear from us, or we think that we're interrupting their day, or we think that we're being a bother. Like we've got this funny thing now where, we book appointments in with our friends. Um, and often if you just reach out and say, do you have time for a chat today? And if you're the someone that's on the other end of that, our inclination may be to say, no, we're too busy, but you will always, always feel better talking to a friend.
Yep, that's very, very true. So yeah, I love all of them, getting out in nature, just doing something that feels a little bit creative and connection. So yeah, maybe when listeners are having their cup of tea today and for the rest of the week, they can choose one of them. So maybe today, pop the kettle on and yeah, phone a friend while you're waiting for your tea to brew
Mhm.
and yeah, see how you feel afterwards. And yeah, I would encourage everyone to get their hands on your journal when they can. It'll be out in a few weeks, sometime in March,
Yes,
end of
yes.
March. Excellent. So I'll pop the link and everything in the show notes. And I will also pop links to where people can find you, if Lost Art Here, and to your wonderful podcast, A Thought I Kept, and to your Substack and everything else that you do. So I'll pop that all in the show notes as well. So thank you so much for telling us about your rebalance moment and then some of the tips and tricks that you've used to sort of pull that back and to help you get to where you are now, where you're in a position to be able to work with so many wonderful women and really help them in some amazing ways. And I'm really excited to see what you do for the future and to where your podcast takes you and your wellbeing journal and just all these amazing connections that you're making. So yeah, I can't wait to see where you go now. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel the same about you. I remember having you on the show. So you have to listen to the episode with you as well, which will be coming out the end of February, beginning of March, actually. But yeah, I feel the same about you. Like, so excited for all that you're doing and all these moments that you're offering people just to rebalance and restore themselves. And it's so important right now.
Maybe sometime we can do a joint session somewhere in
That
the
would be
middle of
so
the
much fun.
UK. That would be great.
All right, thank you for having me.
Lovely. Thanks so much. That's it for today. If something stuck, take it with you. And if nothing did, that's okay too. And if you know someone who could use a quieter few minutes, feel free to share this with them. And if you'd like to keep the kettle on between episodes, I'm over at the Tea Mind on Substack. Thanks for being here and see you next time.